Aalon Cruz scheduled for UFC Virginia Norfolk Fight Night, Saturday, February 29th. That's going to be on ESPN Plus, and that's going to be a big one for you. Coming off the Contender Series, huge knockout, flying knee victory. Dana White took notice right on the spot, told you, yeah, kid, we're going to sign you. And here you are, originally scheduled to fight Steven Peterson out of Fortis MMA, and now you'll be fighting Spike Carlyle, the Alpha Ginger. Tell us a little bit about the new opponent change and what you know about Spike.
Yeah, so, Spike Carlyle, he's 8-1. He's around 5'7", 5'8", and, he's coming off 2 first-round knockouts over his last opponents. He's got real knockout power. I think he's a little more dangerous than Steven Peterson was. Obviously, Steven Peterson had more experience. He already had 5 fights in the UFC, whereas Spike is making his UFC debut like I am. So I've said this in the past, he might be a little hungrier than what Steven Peterson might have been, right? Spike and I are both making our debut, so we're both hungry. So it's going to be a tough fight. I said it could be a tough fight. He's tough. He's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He's a black belt in judo. Most of his fights end up on the ground, and he likes to mount you. You give up your back, he punches you, and then he goes for a rear naked choke.
Well, that sounds a lot like you.
Yeah, a lot like me. If you've seen any of my past fights, most of my fights end up on the ground, and if I'm on top of you, I'm ground and pounding you until you either get knocked out or you quit. Yeah.
Got a little blood splattered on me.
Yeah, so most of my fights get real bloody if I'm on top. So, I'm looking to go out there and put on my best performance and, fight like I know how to and focus on me and not focus on what he's trying to do. I know he brings, a lot of physicality. He's very strong. He's a physical, opponent. But, I just think I'm better in all facets of the game, and I think I'm prepared, and I'm just ready to make my debut and shine.
It's interesting that you say you find him to be more of a dangerous opponent compared to your original schedule with Steven Peterson. Now, Steven Peterson, as you've mentioned, has like about 5 UFC fights, fought the likes of people like Luis Pena, Violent Bob Ross. What about Carlyle, who's making his debut just like you without those 5 UFC fights, which are very valuable in terms of experience? What about Carlyle makes him so much more dangerous in your perspective than the Peterson matchup?
Just the physicality. He just seems like I'm pretty sure he's a lot stronger. And like I said, he has natural knockout power. Like you cannot be in this brawling range or this striking range with him and sit there for too long, because if you get hit by him clean, he can hurt you, he can knock you out. Whereas Peterson, I don't think he really had that type of knockout power, and if he was going to hurt you, it would be off of like a clean shot, and then maybe he TKOs you, but he's not going to knock you out with one punch. Whereas Spike Carlyle does have that one punch knockout power, and then he also has the extensive grappling background, and he's got a lot of good guys to train with. I know Steven Peterson trains at Fortis, and then Spike trains at the training lab with Mark Munoz. He cross-trains at King's MMA, so he's also trained with Beneil Dariush all the time. So he's got a lot of good, partners, but I have a lot of good partners here too. And they push me, and I get my one-on-one coaching with everybody that I have, Coach Daniel, Coach Mahmoud, my strength conditioning coach, Frederick Sadler, and Ybor City Jiu-Jitsu Club with Joey Best.
And aside from Tampa, you definitely take the time to go to the UFC Apex, the UFC Performance Institute. You go there, from what I've seen on social media, you've probably been there a few times over the course of the last 6 months, something like that.
Well, I went out there for the promo that we had to do before the Contender Series, so that was the very first time.
Great experience, right?
Great experience. And we were only there for 3 days, and then we came back. And then we went back out again for the actual fight. So we were only there we were there from Saturday until Tuesday. Nice. And then I went back again on my own for a week to do some training out there, to do diagnostics. Like they had me do a DEXA scan. I did this whole VO2 max. Like they had a mask on me, and I was running on the treadmill. I just got this Omega Wave thing that they have that I get up in the morning and I put it on my chest and in my hand and my third eye location, and it tells me in the morning whether I'm recovered or not. It has these 4 things, and they're all green and in the go. That means like you're good to like really push it for the day, which this morning, I did it actually yesterday after training, and it said I was good to go, like I was really good. And then I also did it this morning, all green. So wow. I've been recovering very well.
Wow, let's talk about recovery then. What are you doing this camp that's giving you such great recovery in such short time?
Man, well, one thing, I've been going to Life in Motion, and I've been doing a lot of laser therapy out here in St. Pete. Dr. Doug's Pro Health, anytime I get in there and do some massage therapy, or he gives me an adjustment, that's huge. I'm always stretching, and I think I'm smarter and really listening to my body this camp. Some days I get up and I'm just like completely wrecked, and I know like I came up with the mentality of like, even if I'm completely burnt out, my knees are giving out, you just got to do it and grind it out, right? But what I've noticed is if I take a day off, or I take a light day, or maybe in this session I don't go as hard, or skip a session, then I'm able to recover a lot faster. So I'm just listening to my body more. Like this morning, I didn't really like go too crazy. I'm fully recovered. I'm ready to go. But I also I went super hard yesterday. So today, I'm not going as hard. Tonight, I'll do some cardio.
Went super hard yesterday, but you woke up to 4 green lights telling you go.
4 green lights to go as hard as I wanted to.
That's interesting. So now that you are on the UFC roster, a little bit more game planning in terms of not just the actual in-cage, not just the grappling and the striking, but I also noticed, because I watch your Champ Camp videos on YouTube, and I suggest people watch those on the Aalon Cruz YouTube channel. Very cool stuff, high quality. I thought I was watching Embedded for a moment there. Eat your heart out, UFC.
Moses Vega Visuals, he's the best.
Yeah, definitely very good work, and I really enjoyed it, but I also had a bunch of takeaways watching that stuff. Learned a little bit about you. One of the things I learned about you, and another ongoing theme here on the Octagon and TGIF Radio, is mental awareness and working with sports psychologists and just attacking certain things before they attack you, right? So tell us a little bit about how you're working with, I know you just started recently, you just did your first Skype session with someone who is helping you with mental awareness. So help us carry on the theme on this show of mental awareness. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, so it's funny because when I watched your recent interview with Blake, I didn't know he was working with a sports psychologist as well. And so I was like, that's great, because a lot of high-level athletes are starting to work with sports psychologists to just help them get any kind of mental edge they can to prepare for competition.
It's a lot to take in at a high level too.
It is, because you already have a million things that you're thinking about, for your, like, especially for fighters, like we have like a million things that we have to think about, like where am I going to train today, how am I going to get my recovery in, blah blah blah, and then you have to think about adding in another mental approach to your camp, which I think has been huge. So his name's Frazier, and he runs the Kaizen Mentality Instagram page, and he reached out to me and asked me if I knew any fighters that would want to do sports psychology or work with a sports psychologist, and I was like, yeah, I would.
Right.
So we've actually done 2 sessions now, and I love it. He gives me some mantras and some things to really think through, and I kind of talk to him about what's going through my mind when I'm thinking about my opponent, or how I'm feeling just coming into my UFC debut. And he gives me some exercises. He sent me a guided meditation that I can listen to. It's about 7-8 minutes long. I listened to it last night before I went to bed, and it just really helps me put my mind focused into something, because I'm the type of person that if I try to go to bed at I could be in bed at 9 o'clock and I'll be up till 2-3 in the morning,
trying
just
to fall
because my
asleep.
mind is just racing all the time.
I can relate 100%.
Yeah, so, and it sucks. The only way you can really get to sleep like that is if you're taking melatonin and 5-HTP or something to really knock you out.
Right.
And it's not good. So he's giving me these things to I can actually focus on while I'm in bed, and it actually does help me go to bed. I know some people journal. I've tried journaling.
It's like an enhanced version of counting sheep.
Exactly, and I've done that too. I've
tried that, but never worked. Never worked for me.
It's so hard. Yeah. I've tried, focusing on my breathing. Breathing in, breathing out, and just doing that.
A lot of benefit to that, but not exactly a sleep inducer.
Yeah, it's just when you have I wish I had the ability that some people do, like my girlfriend does, to just
lay down,
close her eyes and go out. She'd go out anywhere.
I was just thinking about that yesterday, because I watched somebody who had to wake up in 4 hours, because they had to wake up super early. They had to wake up at midnight to go to a midnight shift.
Okay.
And they went to sleep at 8 o'clock, and they just closed their eyes, and I'm like, how do you do that?
Yeah. I think it's a skill. It's a skill, but it's also genetics, because I know my mom also has trouble going to sleep. Her mind races as well.
My mind still races, but I no longer have trouble sleeping. I can go to sleep now, which is nice. But this is about Aalon Cruz. So I'm really happy to see that, you see your teammate, Blake Smith, who obviously probably looks up to you in a lot of different ways, and you guys are kind of inspiring each other. And, you see, oh, wow, that's great. And maybe you've seen some changes in Blake over the course of the last few months or something. Have you seen any changes with your teammates like Blake, who starts focusing on mental health, and even for yourself, you'll start to see some changes over the course of time?
I mean, I definitely notice, a real strong mental fortitude. Like, it just seems like he's super focused when he's in the gym. Like he was saying, how it's not going to help him to think about his family and whatever stuff while he's training, right? And then it's not going to help him to think about fighting and training when he's with his family, because one, you're taking away from the other.
That concept alone is very valuable.
So I noticed that when he comes into the gym, he is just focused on training. We're in the middle of the session, and he's just really good at being present. And so that's what I've really been trying to focus on too, because I could be rolling super hard 100% with somebody, and I could be thinking at the same time about something else. And that's not great. That's not a good thing. So, I'm definitely learning from Blake as well, and just listening to his interview, that I learned some things too, like Ophi, and a few other things. He was dropping some knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, I was listening, I feel like I was listening to like a motivational podcast, and I was like learning some real stuff. So yeah, he's definitely been helping me out.
I mean, not to be selfish or anything, but this is what we aim to do on this show. This is kind of a new launch of the Octagon, and it's not just about fighting. It's a lot more than that, and raising awareness of that stuff, I think, is going to be a big theme of this show. Just because it's people like yourself. You might see something and say, hey, that might work for me. And it could change your life outside of the cage, and I wouldn't take an inkling of credit for that, but I would want to try to implement that and try to push that a lot. So I think that's super important. We've seen a lot of professional athletes, not in the UFC, but outside of the UFC, get overwhelmed with being a professional athlete, with making, starting to make that kind of money and trying to balance your life. And I believe that being proactive and not waiting for your, mental health to deteriorate, and just being proactive, not thinking there's anything wrong with talking to somebody who's talking you through these things. There's nothing wrong with that. Right. We try to do it for ourselves every day, right? We sit there and we tell ourselves things, right? But that positive affirmation and the validation from somebody else, like, those things are tremendous.
Or you talk to like your friends, right? You don't necessarily have to have a therapist to have a therapy session. People vent to people, right, all the time, or they ask people for their advice. You're kind of having your own therapeutic session. So it doesn't matter if you're talking to your friend or if you're talking to somebody who has a PhD in sports psychology. Maybe they have some tools or some methods that can help you work through whatever you're working through.
And 9 times out of 10, you answer your own questions in those conversations.
Just by talking.
That's right, yeah. It's interesting that it works that way. Let's get back to the fight here on Norfolk's fight night. That's going to go down on the 29th of February. It's a leap year. So when March 1st comes around, did that fight actually even happen?
Yeah, right? I don't know. It'll be interesting only celebrating the win of this fight every 4 years, but maybe I make it more special.
That's interesting. My mom was born on a leap year too. She's turning. I think she's turning like 10 this year or something.
So does she celebrate?
No, we do the 28th.
Oh, you do the 28th?
Yeah.
See, I feel like it would be the opposite, because if the 28th and then the next day would be the 29th, so the next day from the 28th would be the 1st. Why wouldn't you celebrate on the 1st?
I see. You get to choose. No, I totally get where you're coming from. I get it. I mean, I've been asking everybody this question. I don't know. It's a good question, but maybe because she was born in February, so they just keep it February. I don't have an answer to that question. All I know is if we celebrated her birthday every 4 years, we'd be in trouble. Yeah, that's not happening. So yeah, leap year. I mean, there's a whole lot of superstitious people too that would be thinking about. Are you superstitious at all, or if I can quote Michael Scott from The Office, are you even just a little stitious?
A little stitious. Yeah, kind of. I guess a little bit, but not like that would affect my fight.
Of course not.
One thing that I did have to get over was the only 2 losses that I had as a pro. It was raining that day. It was a rainy day, and I remember just having to like really kick it out of my head, or try to kick it out of my head, like, oh, it's raining today. Like,
do you have any rituals that are outside the day of the fight that it may have taken you away from?
A ritual outside that took me away from? No, not really. I mean, my biggest thing, I wouldn't even say it's a ritual. It's more like a reward. Is I always eat a vegan blueberry muffin. I don't know why, but it just mentally it makes me feel good, because
this whole camp, right?
It tastes good, and this whole camp, especially like the last 8 weeks or so, I've been dieting super hard, and I haven't been able to like indulge in anything.
You walk around like 180, right?
Well, after being injured, I got up to around there, but you know, I'm a lot lighter now.
Okay.
But you know, normally I like to walk around like 170.
It's got to feel good knowing you're walking
so.
into that featherweight division at 6 foot tall. It has to feel good knowing that you're not at a disadvantage. We see people who are amazing fighters, but they'll go in and they're, like your opponent, Carlyle. I think he's 5'8", 5'7".
Yeah.
It may not be a disadvantage in his eyes, but in the eyes of the fans and the big picture of things on paper, I mean, there has to be some psychological advantage there. Yeah,
there can be. The only thing is like shorter, stockier people, they have the advantage once they're on the inside, right? So like, he's probably pretty strong. If he gets on the inside and we're clinched up, it's probably gonna feel really strong, right? Because I have long limbs, so it's like me like trying to like swim in, and everything's just kind of like long and loose, and then whereas he's like already like this, so he's just kind of like everything's here.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't sit in a clinch with him and try and dirty box him.
That's what he wants.
That's what he would want to do.
Sure.
It all works well if I'm on the outside. That's
right.
where my game plan and my game is going to work the best, is if I'm staying long and making it hard for him to get on the inside, right? And I think that's what most like shorter people is what they feel is when they fight someone who's tall, it's hard to get in on the inside. Because I've sparred with guys that are like 6'3", 6'4", and I understand what a short person feels like, because it's not fun. It's not a fun time trying to get in past these long limbs,
Interesting. And the short guy is typically used to punching and fighting up and looking up when he's fighting.
They have better sight.
Yeah.
You can see better looking up than you can looking down. If I'm here and he's coming in on the inside, I'm kind of like looking down like this, right? I'm not going to be staring straight at him. I'm looking like this. So I might not see as better or as well as him. He's looking straight up. He can see everything.
It's interesting.
So that's why, coaches, made it a big thing that, whenever we come on the inside, we always try to be the same level as them. So you always try to get your stance a little lower.
Interesting. And shout out to your coaches for striking, Defiant Daniel, for wrestling, Mahmoud, and then who's your jiu-jitsu right now?
Ybor Jiu-Jitsu Club, Joey Best.
Yeah, okay.
And
so
then I also come out here to Gracie St. Pete.
I was just getting there. I was going to give a shout.
Gabriel Monado.
Yeah, shout out to them for letting us use the facility today. So let's talk about when you actually leave Tampa and you go to Vegas and you go to the Performance Institute. I know you've worked around the likes of Forrest Griffin, who's basically there every day. He's a fixture.
He's super cool.
So tell us some takeaways that you've had working with him. I know he's helped you with some stuff. I saw on your Champ Camp videos that I, again, suggest people watch on your YouTube channel. Tell us some of your takeaways working with maybe not just Forrest Griffin, but going to the Institute, being around certain people at his caliber, and what kind of takeaways, things that you learned that you brought home with you.
Yeah, so, Forrest, so he's the head of athlete development at the PI, so he's always there. He's just walking you around, he's letting you know how things work, he asks you if you need anything.
If the TV isn't working, he stands next to it so it gets good reception. He basically does
Usually
everything.
He'll make a joke about it, and then while somebody who's coming to fix it, he'll just stand there and watch, and he'll say like,
he's a great character.
Like, yeah, no, he's hilarious.
He's a good character.
When I did my VO2, so I worked with Roman Foman, who he's the one who gave me the Omega Wave thing I was telling you about. He's like a mad scientist, and I don't know.
That's the 4 green light.
Yeah, and it's like a little thing, and it has like one blue light, and it's like a little thing that goes here, and then it goes on your head and your hand.
Interesting.
But Roman's like a scientist, but he's like from like some Baltic area, so he kind of talks like this, like he's telling you these numbers. And so I do the VO2 max, right? I had the mask on. I'm like Ivan Drago. There's an intern in there, Alex, who's also from like over there.
Taking notes.
They're talking, come on, Aalon, keep running. I'm just like, so then Forrest comes in and look at my numbers. He's standing there, he's like, what does he need to do to make this number better, the VO2 max number better? And then Roman will say something. He's like, so he'll say it in like a scientific way, and then Forrest will be like, so basically what he's saying is you need to run a little more or something like that. He's really cool about making like serious things seem kind of like minuscule, He's always, like I said, he's always down to train. I asked him to train like a million times. Finally, he took me over to the Apex because we were walking. We actually went to the PI, and me and my teammate and my boy Moses were going to go upstairs and train. But Connor was up there with Ari Hawani, so they had blocked off the entire upper area. So we were like, all right. So I guess we were in the downstairs gym, and Forrest came up, and he was like, hey, you guys want to go train at the Apex? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, all right, grab your stuff. So we're like, okay. So we grabbed our stuff, and then he gives us a ride in his Tesla. So I'm like, my mind is blown. I'm like, Forrest Griffin's driving us in his car to go train at the Apex.
You're one of them now, man. You got to give yourself some credit.
I know, and that's the weird thing is like thinking of these other fighters as like my coworkers, right? We're coworkers now, and then I'm working with the company and all these people, these coaches, and like the strength coach Kyle and everybody at the PI. They're all there to like help you. Like I could just go by the fueling station, what they call it. That's where Trifecta's at, and the meal things. Like, hey, can I get a pre-training shake? And they make you a shake, and then you come back, get your post-training shake.
Beautiful.
They've got free drinks and little food. They got food there.
You almost break even with the hotel costs and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, the UFC paid for my hotel while I was out there, so
good for them.
I didn't have to worry about that, luckily.
That's good stuff.
And yeah, I mean, I had a blast. I mean, it's if you're a fighter, you definitely need or a UFC fighter, or even if you have a connection to a UFC fighter, and you can go out there because you can bring 4 people that are not,
to come and help you train. And
yeah, so
interesting.
If you can get out there and just be around that atmosphere, I mean, there was Johnny Walker was walking around, what's his name, Marcin Tabora, Dan Ige, Diego Sanchez was in there training every day with his coach. I mean, there was just a ton of fighters walking around, and just being in that environment where everybody's they're all there to train and fight. It's different. In Tampa, I go to my gyms, right, and we do our training sessions, then you leave. And the PI, it's like people live there. Like, I would leave my hotel room at like 9 in the morning, 8 in the morning, go to the PI, and I wouldn't come back till like 7:30 at night. I'd be at the PI almost all day, but that's because I was also doing diagnostics and stuff and then training. But they also do training sessions there. Big gyms come and use the mats in the facility.
That's really good, man. I mean, it's one of the most amazing things that the UFC has done over the years is to create that performance institute and actually just open the doors. I know the NFL and the NBA, each organization, of course, they're going to have those things for their athletes, but they've been around for 100 years.
Right.
So this is very new for the MMA community, and I think it's phenomenal because, like you said, not only can you go to the institute and train, go to the Apex and train, but you can get like your meal plans done there basically for free, from my understanding. If you're signed to the UFC,
you can eat there for free.
It's amazing.
Every day.
I'm sure there's a lot of fighters who take well advantage of that.
There are, but there are a lot of fighters that don't know about it too. Like Trifecta. Like I work with Trifecta and this entire camp, and they send me every single week I get 2 big boxes at my doorstep, and I have 3 meals every single day.
Guess who's hiding behind those boxes? USADA.
Yeah. The thing is, like, they work, they work with the UFC, so everything they have is like non-GMO, organic, grass-fed, wild-caught.
And you don't have to worry about testing.
I don't. And then also Thorne Research also works with the UFC. Most of their supplements are NSF certified, and the UFC's partnered with them, so I get free supplements from Thorne.
And on top of that, if I can expand on that, if you have a supplement sponsor or something who's like local to Tampa or whatever the case is, you can send samples to them, and they can test them for you, so they can say, hey, this is just fine. You go ahead and take it, so you don't end up in some tainted supplement thing or anything. Right. So the UFC has a lot to offer, and I think what you said was really important, that not all the fighters know about all of those offerings.
They don't. I have had to tell fighters, like certain fighters will ask me, like, hey, how did you get hooked up with Thorne or Trifecta? And these are UFC fighters. Right. And I'm like, you just hit up this person. Like, I know you know this person.
Right.
Like, talk to them till you want to be onboarded on the Trifecta, or you want to be onboarded onto Thorne, and then they send you everything for free. Like, I get free food and free supplements, and if I want to go out, if you're living out there in Vegas, that's probably ideal, because if you're living, which makes sense why a lot of fighters live there. You're getting free food, you're getting free supplements, and then if you want to eat at the PI, you're eating free food there too,
right? And
you're training there.
And you can get training with them too as well, because the UFC, they have coaches there as well too, like on staff coaches that work with people.
They only have a strength and conditioning coach there, and then they also have like their physical therapy area, the recovery area. As far as like wrestling and striking and jiu-jitsu, they don't have one yet.
Here's where I'm coming from with that comment was, like, for instance, like Francis Ngannou, when he came in, I know Dewey Cooper Jr., who's a very famous former kickboxer. Now he's Ngannou with the dreads. That's right. Now he's one of the coolest people I've ever met, by the way. Super philosophical, awesome approach to the fight game. Very positive, cool guy. Someone to look into if you're a fight fan. But from my understanding, like he's like kind of an in-house coach there or something like that. I could be wrong, but I thought he was like a UFC gym coach.
I never saw him there. From what I understand while I was out there, is different gyms have sessions at certain times. So like Syndicate MMA, I went and sparred there one Saturday. They come out to the PI and use the mat for a certain amount of time on certain days. And then also 10th Planet Vegas, they come out and Extreme Couture, they'll go out and they'll do their own sessions as well on certain days at certain times. So there are certain days and certain times that there's classes going on, but it's not necessarily the PI putting them on. They're just using the mat.
Yeah. No, that makes more sense for sure. I appreciate that. That's for sure. That's cool. If for some reason somehow you're just like joining the video or just joining the show, on with me right now, Aalon Cruz. He will be fighting at UFC Fight Night, Norfolk, Virginia, Saturday, February 29th. That's right, 29th. Yep. He'll be going up against the Alpha Ginger, Spike Carlyle, originally scheduled to fight Steven Peterson out of Fortis. That fight got dropped, and now ahead of you, right in front of you, is Spike, a man they call the Alpha Ginger. So before we wrap up the interview, let's kind of touch on the fight one more time. What can we expect in this fight? You just came off of one of the biggest highlight reel knockouts in UFC history, made its rounds on, I think you're the first person to be on SportsCenter top 10.
It was #1.
I think I think you're the first UFC fighter to be on SportsCenter the number one for the highlight.
I've definitely seen on top 10, but #1, I don't know.
I think you're the first.
Yeah, well, that would be awesome.
Believe. So how do you come out of that? How do you parlay that type of momentum into the next fight without giving away game plan? What's your mindset?
Well, so the thing is, I'm not my fighting style just tends to make exciting fights. I don't ever go out to grind anybody out and win by points. I don't go out to just get through the fight. I'm always trying to finish the fight. I could be winning 2 rounds and 4 minutes and 30 seconds of the third round, and I'm still trying to finish you in the last 30 seconds. And so I don't think I've ever, you could ask anybody that's seen me fight, I've never been in a boring fight.
I agree.
And it's not like I'm putting myself in danger either to get there. I'm never like brawling with anybody or putting myself in dumb positions to make it exciting, or because, I just lose my mind in there. It's because I'm always looking for the finish. I'm being aggressive, and I'm looking to hurt my opponent at that time. Obviously not after that.
Of course.
And it just turns into an exciting fight, and I'm pretty good at being safe myself. Like I rarely get hit too much in fights. I know that could change, later on. But
well, you're going up against a different caliber now.
Different caliber of people. But up until now, I'm pretty good at not getting hit and hitting people and almost finishing people or finishing people.
Your UFC Contender Series knockout, wasn't that in the third round?
That was in the third round.
Yeah.
And that was a tough fight. Stephen Wynn was, it was a 3-round striking fight. I think that's the only fight I've ever had, to be honest, as a pro.
Felt close.
That was all striking.
Oh.
And it didn't really feel too close to me. I mean, it's so like watching it live, for sure I can understand like that it looks like it was super close. But like if you look at the fight stats, like after the fight, like I outstruck him every single round. And in the fight, that's what I'm thinking too, because a lot of the shots that he was throwing weren't landing, or they weren't landing clean. The cleanest thing he was landing was like the left hook. The left hook was landing like, he had landed it maybe like 5 times on the same spot, and that's when my eye kind of blew up. But other than that, I thought I definitely was, winning the whole fight. But like I said, I can see how people watching it live, there's a lot of emotion involved.
Don't take my comment as an opinion. I was just thinking. That's where you were going with your.
It was a tough fight. It was definitely one of my toughest fights to date.
Sure,
for sure.
They're not going to make it easy for you to get in.
No,
of course.
No.
Yeah. So now Uncle Dana is definitely happy with you, and I guess it's up to you now to continue that momentum. And Aalon Cruz, we wish you the best of luck. He'll be on ESPN Plus Saturday, February 29th, up against the Alpha Ginger, Spike Carlyle. Much respect to Spike. I wish you guys both a healthy fight. Of course, wish you the best, my man. Aalon Cruz, you'll see him on UFC Norfolk Saturday, February 29th. Thank you for joining.